I feel like I have a lot of questions about David's relationship with his brothers. Um,
Yeah.
because in the beginning it talks about like how close he and his brothers are, how much they play, and then when the abuse from their mother starts, they kind of separate. And then Russell's born, and he becomes
Yes.
Mama's little minion.
Hmm.
And David expresses a lot how he has so like he can't stand his brothers, that he has no feelings for them, but then like when he gets that option of that little bit of happiness to go outside and play with his brothers, he jumps on it, and it's like all that overwhelms him and he forgets all of that. So I like really wonder how the relationship with his brothers was because of that.
Right. Well, and then it also mentioned in there, about Kevin when Kevin was born after Russell. That was like the baby, and
Mm-hmm.
how um what was it? His mom went somewhere, or she. I don't know how many kids were there. Was there five?
Yeah, there was 5 boys. It was
Ronald, Dave, Stan, Russell, Kevin.
yep.
Okay. Well, there was I can't remember exactly, but his mother left to go somewhere, and it mentioned that he was with Kevin and his dad at the house, and how Kevin was laughing and he was playing with him, and how it gave him so much joy to sit there and hear him laugh. Hold on, that had to be like one of the last chapters
It is. I know
before the dad left.
I know exactly what part you're talking about. I just can't find it.
No, I think it's in the Lord's Prayer. That's what I'm looking at right here. It's on page 145. It just talks about, hold on, I still don't know where his mom went. Mother took the other boys to a baseball game in Oakland, leaving father to babysit with Kevin while I performed chores. And then it just talks about how Kevin lifted his head and smiled at him and his heart melted. And that he said, I felt depressed and thought, oh, wait, hold on. The sound of Kevin's laughter filled my heart with warmth, and later, whenever I felt depressed, I thought of him, and I smiled inside when I heard Kevin cry out in joy.
Yeah, and then like that next paragraph, and it says that my brief encounter with Kevin quickly faded away and my hatred surfaced again. I fought to bury my feelings, but I couldn't. I knew I was never meant to be loved. I knew I would never live a life like my brothers. Worst of all, I knew it was only a matter of time until Kevin would hate me just like the others did. So I kind of wonder if whenever David starts talking about how much like the relationship with his brothers and how bad it is, I wonder if he doesn't actually hold any hate for his brothers, but he just automatically assumes that they hate him no matter what. So he wants to
Because of his
give those
and
feelings.
because of his mom. Because like you even stated, I think that Russell became his mom's minion. And it was
Mm-hmm.
because he was so young, he didn't know any better whether to treat somebody like that or not. But his mom was like instilling that in him. And then another thing about the brothers and the relationships, I'm glad you mentioned that, was like the brothers' friends. It mentioned, okay, so when she was abusing him and she used to put him in the bathroom and she'd run cold bath water and
And
she'd
leave him
only
there.
let him, yeah, she would leave him there in the cold bath water and only let his nostrils be out of the water like an alligator. And
Mm-hmm.
like he said, like it mentioned in the book though, that his brothers would bring their friends in while he was in the tub for hours and they would just stand there and laugh at him. And like the friends would be like, what did he do? What did he do this time? And then the brothers were like, I don't know.
It's so weird to me that even like even the children outside of David's family, they view his mother treating him like that as normal instead of a like abusive circumstance.
Right.
It's just like that's how the family works, but the other boys aren't treated that way. David's the only one who faces consequences like that.
Right. Well, see, and another one of my questions about the friends was like, so I don't know about anybody else, but I personally, if I saw something like that at one of my friends' house, it would, I mean, whether I thought it was right or wrong or anything, it'd be alarming. I would go home and tell my parents.
Yeah.
Like, whether I knew whether it was right or wrong or not, it'd be something where I'm like, well, hey, guess what I saw? Like, so the fact that, I mean, and who knows? I mean, I guess they could have went home and told their parents, but then it just led to some of my other questions, like, if they did go home and tell their parents, why was it not reported? And then I tried to answer that question myself by saying maybe the parents thought that the kids weren't telling the truth or that they didn't understand the situation, you know, or misunderstood it.
That's kind of what I'm thinking, because this whole time period is when David is between the ages, I think it was 4 and 12. I think that's what the age range for this book was. But I mean, 4 and 12, even with his older brother being older than him, that's not much older. They really possibly could not have understood what was going on.
Right. Well, and then it also said, I know it stated in the book too, like he got held back, what was it, second grade?
It was first grade.
First grade, okay. And then Stan, he was in the same grade as Stan once he had gotten held back.
Yes.
Okay.
So he really wasn't that much older than his youngest brother in the beginning time period. He was only like a year older than him, but I don't know how old the oldest brother is.
Yeah. Another thing that I wanted to talk to you about in this book was the dad. So I'm just so he knew what was going on to Dave, and like Dave looked at him as his safe haven, I guess.
Yeah.
But I don't know. The fact that he stayed with him and like after the mom stabbed him and did all the bad things, because at first I was just under the impression like maybe he doesn't know what's going on to Dave. But like it also makes me wonder like about the relationship that Dave had with his father before the abuse started and all that. Like, I don't know, because he just doesn't stand up for him the way that I feel like a dad should.
I feel like David's father is a very, very passive person. And, you know, it points out in the book that he works 24-hour shifts and he's barely there. So I agree with you on that. I thought that he just didn't know what was going on. But there's absolutely no way that the mom is hiding the bruises, the dirty clothes, the fact that the boy doesn't even sleep in the house. He sleeps in the garage.
Yeah. Well, at one point, even, you know, after his dad's long shifts, it mentions that he would go get drunk and stuff. And it's almost like, well, did he have to go get drunk just to come home and be around her to watch her mistreat Dave, I guess? And then another thing was it got weird when she all of a sudden like told Dave that he could start sleeping in his father's bed.
Yeah.
This was not long before the dad left.
That's another thing. David's dad said to him, I don't know exactly what page it was, but I remember him telling David, we will get out of here one day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And David's dad, you know, 24-hour shifts, he goes home, he gets drunk, he comes back, he doesn't want to fight with his wife. He ends up fighting with his wife and he leaves. But he knows what's going on to David at this point. Why doesn't he take David with him? Why is David still stuck at home while his father gets to leave?
Right. And then Dave talks about, I guess I feel like I brought up the dad and I keep forgetting that our topic is Dave. But also like the way that the kids at school treated him and like I don't know, how do you get through that mentally? Like to be abused at home, to be abused at school, and then the teachers obviously didn't feel very great about him either at points in the book because they've called his mom several times on him for things that happened at school that got him only.
Like, I really wondered, how did he deal with that? And one of my questions was, David continually said throughout the book that he would be stronger than his mother and grow above her. And I'm assuming that he applied that to school as well. But, he started facing that abuse really young. And I wonder what triggered that fight response in him instead of, the flight and the give up response. Like, what made him decide, I'm going to be stronger than this and get through it? Because that's a lot for, a 4 to 12-year-old child to deal with and handle.
Yeah. Now that you actually said that, I think at one point in the book it did state that that Dave got through it because he wanted to survive. Like, and that the only way that his mother could win is if he died, because that's what she wanted. Because like she stated several times, like, I'll kill you, or if you don't do this, she stated things like that, like, or basically insinuating she didn't care if he had died. So that maybe that was some of that too.
Hold on, I had a question I was looking at just a second ago. Oh, okay. So I'm gonna go back to the brothers for a split second because it kind of connects to the punishment part, because on page 31 it starts discussing, this is whenever David starts describing his mother sending the boys on wild goose chases hunting for things that she had lost. One of the paragraphs says, while father was at work, mother would often yell and scream while forcing my brothers and I to search the entire house for something she had lost. The quest usually started in the morning and lasted for hours. After a while, I was usually sent to search in the garage, which was under part of the house like a basement. Even there, I trembled upon hearing mother scream at one of my brothers. The searches continued for months, and finally I was the only one signaled out to look for her things. So the punishment started with all three of the boys and then eventually just like adapted into David. And I think that connects to your question of why is it David? Why is David the one singled out?
Right. Well, and then she says, the mom kept saying he's a bad kid, remember? And like she'd make comments like that saying that he was a bad kid.
Yeah, he's a bad boy. Made him stare in the mirror and tell himself that he was a bad boy.
But it never stated like anything that he just did that was bad. Or I didn't think, like, just by reading the book, I didn't think that there was anything that was just bad. Yeah.
The only thing that it elaborated on that was bad behavior was him stealing food out of other children's lunch boxes, but that's just a survival thing. That wasn't even just him being bad.
Right, or him digging it out of the garbage can, or going and stealing it out of the cafeteria, and, when he had the hot dogs.
Yeah, and like the frozen pie crust out of the freezer in the garage too, because he sat on that little cot he had and was eating that.
Yeah. I don't know. And then like what she did to him with the is that chemical that it was ammonia and bleach she put in the bathroom. Like honestly, as I was reading that, I was just thinking to myself, like, he was young when that happened. Like, how do you think so quick to take the clean rag and, like, shove it over your face and then to go put your face? I mean, I guess in that situation, you do what you got to do to survive.
Yeah,
and he was
fast.
Right. But the fact that he thought quick enough to get over to the like the vent in the floor and like sit there and try to breathe in, because she made him drink bleach and ammonia once in the book that I remember, and it like burned his tongue and his throat and stuff.
See, that hurt my heart, and I actually skipped over the parts that describe that in detail, so I didn't have to read it, so I didn't know that.
I know, this was a very difficult book to read.
I have such a big heart for children, and reading something like that, it made me nauseous to think about. I could not finish it.
Yeah, I know. I completely understand. Let me see what else I might have on here.
I've got I've got a little question about the constant forgiving of his mother, if we want to talk about that. Because
Okay.
my fifth question was David forgives his mother a couple times throughout the book, believing good days were the turning point for his life. Instead, his mother turns back to her old ways and David is disappointed again. However, when asked if his mother abuses him, he denies it and protects her, even with the back and forth past. And I'm wondering if like David's suffering from like a sub form of Stockholm syndrome with his mother, like he wants to love her and wants her to love him. And
Yes,
wants to stay
I
there.
agree with that. I think that's it for sure because I know one time in the book, what was it that he did? He had that teacher. There was a certain teacher in the book.
The substitute teacher that stepped in for the first 2 weeks of the school year, right?
No, it's actually the one after that. Maybe I don't know. He Zeigler was his name.
That was the principal.
That okay. Well,
Oh,
there
wait,
was
no. It wasn't the principal. That was his homeroom teacher that he had whenever he was picked up, and he was the one who really worked with David and was like
yes.
prime pupil. He's the one that David took the paper home to his mom, and his mom was like, "You could never impress me."
Yes. See, that's what I was going to mention is that even then, like when he got a paper that made him proud of himself, it's like he had to take it home to her and it's like he wanted her approval before he felt proud of himself or something.
I noticed like David's relationship with his father is like he knew that his dad loved him, but his dad just didn't care to fight with his mother, I think.
Yeah.
With his mother, David did everything in his power to make her love him because I really believe she got in his head, made him think that he was this bad person that she made him out to be. And then because that's his mother, he didn't want to abandon her. He wanted to make it work, even at such a young age, because young children, we're taught to love everybody, love our parents, no matter what. You know, they are our people for the rest of our lives. But
Right.
and his mother's the one trying to end his life.
Yeah.
And so I really just like, whenever I was reading it, I was like, this sounds so much like Stockholm syndrome, you know, wanting to make his mother love him, even though she abuses him. I just couldn't get it out of my head.
Right. Let me see if I have anything else on mine that.
I think we've already discussed the educators and stuff taking so long to get him help.
Yes. Well, and then just the fact that the book was just, I don't know, it's kind of, because at the beginning it starts in, like the book literally starts with him going to the nurse and they made him take his clothes off and he stripped down and they were like, she was taking notes of like where all the bruises were and everything and the scar on his chest where she stabbed him and all that. And then the cop, you know, like the cop was taking him out of town or something. And then it goes into talking about like the abuse leading up to that, I guess. But where I feel like it like just kind of left it in the blank or in the dark was like during the actual abuse where he talks about what he went through, he doesn't mention much about the it doesn't mention much about the teachers like questioning him and, you know, trying to help him or anything like that.
I think as a personal experience with some educators, we have some educators who stick to their role that they had in high school. So I see an educator who was, you know, very socially involved, a lot of the groups and stuff. I see problems with them having interactions with those kids who might need a little more help because they don't necessarily fit into the area they would have been in. So you're not going to see an ex-cheerleader teacher more than likely, you know, really getting involved with that student who has a bad body odor, is wearing dirty clothes, you know, has greasy hair. It's very uncomfortable for some people to handle those situations, and I see that being an issue with David, but there comes to a point where there has to be some intervention, and I really think that educators failed him because it took so long.
I agree. And some of it too is like, so if they did question him about the stealing the kids' lunches and stuff, if they did question him about it, it almost makes me wonder, did they break David's trust by calling his mom multiple times before and getting him punished at home for things like that? And maybe that made him like not want to trust him and open up to tell him the actual truth as to what was going on at home with this mom. Like, it just kind of makes me wonder.
See, I think that's where it could go back and forth between that, not thinking that he has any help and between the wanting his mother to love him so bad that he can't stand it.
Right. Yeah, you're right.
It could very much go either way.
That really just shows how pure and innocent kids are to, no matter what your mom could do to you, like you'd still seek her approval.
Kids very much, they love and they want to be loved, and David was no exception for that. He just wanted to love and be loved, and he didn't have it.
Yeah. Well, another sad thing was like how his mom like treated him like a dog. Like after she'd get him out of that cold bath and she'd throw him outside.
Yeah.
Like, and what was he dripping wet when she threw him outside? Because that's what I took from that. But I don't know because then I thought, you do believe so?
I do think so.
Well, see, and then that makes me wonder. It's like, how did he not freeze to death? Like with it being freezing cold outside, like how did he not get hypothermia? And then another thing is, how did the neighbors not see him out in the backyard unless the yard was fenced in?
That's what I'm gonna assume, because in the beginning of the book it talks about how his mother used to make him and his two brothers, when it was just the three of them, make them go outside into the backyard and like look into the house at their Christmas tree. And so I really think that area was fenced in away from sight.
You're probably right, because I've even thought, or one of my other questions was like, how did the neighbors not notice that, because it stated that the other boys went out and played during the day and Dave was not allowed to go outside and play with his brothers. And so, like, as a neighbor, you would think that you would notice, if you know that somebody has 5 kids and you only see 3 or 4 of them every day, but you never see the 5th one, it just kind of makes you curious, like, well, what's wrong? Where's that kid? Like,
well, do you remember the part about where his mother became friends with one of the neighbors?
Yes, Shirley.
Yes.
I have that question too.
And I can't remember exactly. I think it was she noticed something was wrong with David, or she noticed that he wasn't out that much and she reported, but David's mother flipped that switch on him, said, "Hey, I love you. I want this to work out. I want us to forget the past." Got him back on her side because she knew it wouldn't take much. And then he's stuck in this situation.
Okay, I gotcha. So Shirley is the one that got the like child services or whatever to come to the house and question David. Okay.
Oh, I'm trying to find it because I'm trying to figure out exactly what it was that made her report it. I also remember him going door to door with the neighbors and like saying, "Oh, I forgot my lunch at home. Can you make me a new one?" And his mom catching him with the brown bag on the way home that one of the ladies had given him and driving him back to that neighbor's house and her not being there.
Yes. Because she was sure that he stole the lunch, or he went in and he broke. I think she thought that he broke into somebody's house and made the lunch himself.
Yeah. She was accusing him of stealing again, basically. And whenever that neighbor wasn't there to verify that she had made him the lunch, his mother went like ballistic.
Yeah.
I also think this book is like a prime example of, the grass is always greener on the other side. Because in one of the beginning chapters, David discusses how his mom became a leader for Cub Scouts. And all of the boys in Cub Scouts were like, I wish my mom was like your mom. I wish I had your mom. But little did they know that, like, that same mom was, you know, abusing and beating and everything else to David. And he's sitting here hearing, oh, my mom's so great, but why does she treat me so bad?
Right. And something that was sad to me that happened to him was when she would have him doing his chores and she would time him, but she would purposely set the time limit for him to get his chores done. Like, she'd set it like where it was like 20 minutes, knowing that he couldn't get those chores done in 20 minutes, and then tell him that if he didn't get it done in that time, that he couldn't eat dinner.
And that was discussed whenever she stabbed him as well, because he was on a 20-minute time limit to get those dishes done. She stabbed him and she was like, you have 30 minutes. The boy, you just stabbed the boy.
Yeah. And then he even, like, he was getting dizzy and stuff. And so I think, like, because he couldn't reach, like, he was having a hard time reaching to put him in there because they had stabbed him in the stomach, or, well, what was it? It was like below the chest. Was that right?
I think it was right in the rib area, wasn't it? Like on his side.
Because it wasn't like right here in, like, up here in the chest area, because it wasn't the heart or anything. It was down lower.
Yeah, I think it was somewhere on the side of his abdomen where there weren't any vital organs where it could go deep and cause that much injury and it bleed as much as it did. Because after that, he talked about how it got infected because he didn't have any medical care for it because his mom wouldn't help him take care of it. And he just sat there and squeezed all the infection out of it. And I can't imagine the pain that child felt.
No, me either. Or just the pain of being abandoned by both your parents. But I think, didn't the dad help him finish those dishes that night just to help him?
For a while he was, but it was such a fight with his mother that his dad eventually just quit helping him.
Yeah, and she, like, forbid the dad to see him for a while because of that.
Yeah, told him that she couldn't have, told him like he was having anything to do with him.
Yeah, because she said that he was doing too much for David.
And I, like, in the book, you know, everything is from David's point of view, and I feel like that almost creates a bias on how we are supposed to view the other characters. And I know that our main focus of this is David, but all of the other characters intertwined make up David and his story. And with David telling the story, we're getting the biased point of view of it. We're hearing, you know, the parts where his mother loved him so much are over-exaggerated and over-explained. And they just make his mother sound so awesome. And then, like, the bad parts, they're explained bad, but they're not nearly as bad as everything else.
Right. I don't know. My biggest question about the brothers, I guess, is, like, did he still try? Because, okay, you stated previously, like, he did love his brothers at one point in the book. Like, he wanted a relationship with him. Like, he wanted to be close to them. So it just makes me wonder, like, when they got or, you know, when he got taken away from them, did he ever try to reach out and see if that's how they truly felt? You know, the way that they treated him.
Okay. Could I confirm that you still hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. But, yeah, there's a lot of, like, it's almost like not everything has been tied off. There's still a ton of loose ends, this story. There's plenty of explanation to go along. Because I think a big part of, you know, facing the abuse as a child, like reading an autobiography from an abused child, you know, it makes you wonder about how their life was afterwards. How were their relationships? I wonder if, you know, whenever he was removed from the home, did he have any more contact with his brothers or his father or his, you know, grandparents? They discussed, you know, very little, but they were still, as far as I know of, in the picture.
Yeah. Well, and then, you know, like, just from reading the book and stuff, it just sounds like Dave was in he had a tough situation. Don't get me wrong. He had a awful situation, but it's like, at the same time, like, it's almost like he was in a good place. Like, he still prayed at times. Like, now it did state there was times where he felt that there wasn't a God and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I still feel like overall, like he was in a healthy spot, I guess mentally, I would say, because like even when the kids were taunting him to jump off the boat,
Yeah.
like he was like he acted like he was gonna do it, but like something changed his mind or something. So
Yeah,
it's
I
like,
feel David's character is very mentally strong.
yes,
Like, he talks about all the mental aspects. He takes us through, you know, what his thought processes were during that time period. But we see that David's character is also physically weak, but he is a child. So that comes along with him being much smaller than his abuser.
right. Well, and then the fact